I told Amy I'm not much of a speaker, get a little tongue-tied. So I decided, after trying to give this demo to myself like umpteen times, I thought the best thing I could do is bring a lot of my work and demonstrate how I put the fabric on and show you how I select the fabrics and how you cut it up and use it wherever you want to. So then if you'd like to, I can do a little gluing on this one. And you know, if you want to look at them closer. All of these have fabrics in them. And most of the fabrics are painted in some way. Anyway, I made a sheet so that you could see what the materials list is. I guess maybe I should just go through it briefly. So what I want to show you is how to apply fabrics to canvases, if you want to. Why I do it. It adds, for me, interest and dimensionality. And I grew up in a family of sewers. And I used to sew board in a fabric store waiting for them to get their patterns and their fabrics. And my mother was, she made all my clothes. And I truly hated to sew. But I love fabrics. So after being an interior designer and then having my kids and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, trying a bunch of different things, I ended up taking art again and really, really loving it. I hadn't done it since high school. And I was complaining to one of my sisters at one point. I was doing this Oriental person, and I was trying to paint their kimono on them. And I was saying, it's just so unfair because I really hate all the detail I'm having to do with this. And so she, being a quilter, pulled out some fabrics and she says, well, here, just glue these on. And that got me started, which is kind of crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so that started me on my life of crime. For a while I thought of it as cheating, I thought, well, maybe this is more crafty than real fine art. But now I think as long as I am acknowledging that there's fabric in there, and it really gives me a lot of pleasure to do it. And I think it adds something to it. So I feel like I really don't care. I'm just going to do what I like to do, and that's the way to do it. So anyway, I have actually it's a pretty short materials list. If you're really interested in trying it, there are really only a couple things that I use. This stuff is called gel gloss. This is by Golden. It's their regular gel gloss. Or Liquitex puts out a product called Gloss Gel. And this is my glue. And both of these are for acrylic, for use with acrylics. And when you think of a canvas, it is an acrylic surface. It's gessoed. It's got, it's got this finish on it. But this stuff you can use on fabric, and you coat both sides of the fabric. You want to be sure you seal it when you put it on. So you put some on your canvas, and then you put the fabric down, and then you put some over the edges and make sure you get it all covered. And when it dries, it's just like it's a part of your canvas. And you can treat it like you would any canvas.
Now, what is that coating you say?
This one is Liquitex Gloss Gel.
It's gel.
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 And the reason I use gloss gel is on the back here, it tells about how to use it. And one of the important things it says is that it's transparent. It dries transparent. And I want my fabrics to not be translucent. I want them to be transparent. I want them to be very clear. So I use the gloss. And if it is too glossy, you can always put a finish on it that'll dull it down later. So I glue with this. And then I'm so excited. I had a piece, I was going to say, if you want to see a piece that has fabrics that hang off of it, go to Framations and look at it, and that's so...
Well, you can't, because she sold all the artwork that we have.
What a shame.
What'd you say?
But sold. But that piece has, like, it has pieces that hang off of it. And so if you use this stuff, this is called gloss medium and varnish. And if you coat the fabric with that, then you have to wait for it to dry. It dries flexible. So basically you could glue it to a surface, but glue some of it. And like in my case, they look like little paper airplane pieces, and you can open them up. So, you know, that's if you're really starting to get into it and you like it and you decide you want to really experiment with it. So anyway, this is all the high-tech stuff I use. Then anything else is the stuff that most of us have in our studios. Tracing paper, scissors, Sharpies and watercolor pencils, gloves, vinyl gloves that I use because I get tired of peeling the gel off my fingers. Waterproof tarps and sponges and rags and paper towels because it's messy. I use acrylics for my first part of the painting. So I use little containers to mix up watery acrylics and I have water. So it's pretty messy. The reason I start with acrylics is I glue onto an acrylic surface. The canvas itself is fine. If I start with acrylics, I can do an underpainting. I can glue on whatever I want. And then once that's dry, I've got a bulletproof canvas. And then I can do whatever I want with it. I can put more acrylics over, or I can switch to oils. As long as I don't go switch into oils and then try to go back to acrylics, I'm okay. So it just gives me, I have experimented with this for probably, I don't know, Mary, maybe 10 years or less. And I've made every mistake in the book. So I'm just telling you, this is what works for me. But there's probably a lot of other ways to do it. So as far as application, I've tried a lot of different things. I've covered the entire canvas with fabric and then painted over it. Sometimes I'll do pet portraits and put that one out. But that's one idea. Like I have some people that have asked me to do pet portraits for them. And so what I'll do is I'll cover a little 11 by 14 with a piece of, I'll cover it entirely. I'll wrap it with a fabric that I like, just a fun one that I think fits their dog. You know, a lot of times it's a real special thing, and then I paint the dog onto the fabric itself. And in a case like that, I sort of white out the inside of where the dog is because it's really hard to paint on a busy surface like this. But that's one application. Then other applications, here's the one I was telling you about with all the pieces that hung off. There were about a dozen of these little paper airplane type things, but they were actually fabrics. And this was the tree in my backyard, and I called it high rise because I have so many birds that live in there, and I wasn't really too worried about making it so realistic. So I had everything that could fly, including paper airplanes and, you know, a bunch of things that folded. And then also you can use fabric to like have a little joke. Like this one that's sold at Framations was fish, but the pieces in it are cat faces, and it was like I was making catfish. So I had this really wonderful fabric, and when I saw this fabric, I just had to have it. And I cut out little pieces and put it on the fish. And I didn't say anything about it, but if somebody looks closely at it, then they suddenly see the cat's eyes. And it's just kind of a joke.
On a side note on that, that was last summer, I think, when I sold that piece, and the people who bought it hadn't noticed the cat's eyes until after they paid for it, and they're like, there's cats in there. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm thinking, that's not gonna break the sale. And they're like, we love it. And I'm like, thank you.
So you can have a lot of fun with fabrics. And like I said, I really love fabrics. I guess it must be in my blood. So once I started collecting, I got up all my sister's scraps, and she sewed a lot of them together, and now she gives me she'll experiment with something and she'll say, do you want my experiment? This is one of her experiments. Isn't this fantastic?
Yes.
And then she did this one too. This one I covered with that stuff, this gloss medium. So you can see it's bulletproof. It's just really, and I'm going to glue it somewhere. Like for example, this is an acrylic start on a canvas. This piece was horizontal, and I had lots of my favorite colors, and I dripped them on, and I built it up over many times of working with it. And I thought it would be a great place to start, where I could put sunflowers in here. So I tried to, in order to demonstrate to you how it can be fun. I can't say it's time intensive, and you have to love fabrics, and it helps if you have 8 milk crates full of them. But if you don't, you can always go to Joann's with a coupon, and I go there regularly. So I did this series here to show you. That was one that's prepared to do something with. This is one that I prepared like that, and then I started painting my underpainting, and I got so involved in it, I just kept going. And I finally finished it, and it got a little thick on there, and I decided I'm not going to glue anything on it, so that would work. But this one had a piece like this, and I glued it in, and then I just started working with it with acrylic. But there are 2 bird shapes in here that I'm going to build them up. So what I do is I get some tracing paper, and I trace the form that I want. And then I pick out the fabric that I want to use. And for this particular bird, I think it's important to have something that we can keep with this huge, heavy form. So I thought, and I'm not trying for realism at this point, but I thought I would put in the bird, and then after I glue that in, then I can glue in the wing. So that's the start. And then I could start layering on top of that, and I can embellish it with all sorts of things. Like if you know the anatomy of a bird's wing, you can sort of, instead of making it totally realistic, you can sort of put fun, similar shapes to indicate parts of the feathers and parts of the wings, the different sizes. And you can just build it up. You can have different colors for tails that, you could start building down on it, and you can keep layering it and layering it and layering it until you just feel like it's done. And then you can go back and put paint over that. So you have a lot of possibilities with it. And for example, this one here is kind of a very abstract looking thing. It was a baby that was in my backyard.
Oh, I see it.
And so I like that photo. So then I decided I would try it. So I went through all of my fabrics, and I came across a number that I just thought reminded me of the spots, that a fawn has in it. I pulled out a lot of polka dots and different ones, and then I started thinking about the grass. I had these sort of saw-shaped parts, dark areas, and so I ended up finally with all of this on here, and it became more of an abstract once it was all on. But if you have your underpainting with whatever image you want, and you work with that composition, and you get it so you feel it's pleasing, and the composition is right, you don't have to worry about making it realistic anymore, because that under image is going to hold for you. And you can just go from there, and you can just really have fun with it. And that's really what that was. That's one of the more recent ones. So there were several different applications. This one has a number of pieces of fabric in it, and usually I use odd numbers of fabrics. probably anywhere from 3 to 15. What I do is, these are some of the ones that I brought. Some of these are my favorites. And I lay them, I get my painting sort of underpainted, and then I start thinking about what kinds of colors I might want to use and what types of feeling I want to have. And I just love color, so Nora can tell you, I mean, it screams color, that's me. And so I collect, these are part of my collections. I just, it's all kinds of patterns, small and large. My sister gave me this one recently. I don't know how I'm going to use it, but it's kind of fun. I do a lot with birds. And so I have them, I have plastic bags in my crates, and they're according to color. So I'll have some that will be, mostly when you get fabrics, they're more than one color, and that's what makes them so much fun. And I think the thing I like about fabrics is they combine the oddest colors together, and they get away with it. It's like you like it, and you look at it and you go, I never would have thought of doing that. And it sort of frees you, because if they can do it, I can do it. And I really like these butterfly forms, and they combine all kinds of, mainly, different shapes, which you can cut apart, or you can use, I think, parts of to give you a feeling of it. Like for butterflies, in the reflections, I did the acrylic water and left that really loose. But in the reflections are the butterflies. I know that those are fabric. And I could have painted them myself, but I didn't feel that it was necessary. I just cut them and applied them. And I think if you get those colors and the composition, and it just starts to flow, and you feel, I want the fact that this really makes me happy. I want to put that out there, and I think that sometimes that works. There are several kinds of fabrics, but there are two main ones. Some are printed. This is a printed fabric. You have to use the front side of it. If you use the back side, it's pretty dull. You can still see it. You could use the back side, but probably you'd prefer to cut the front. But that's a printed one. But if you go to a boutique, it's dyed all the way through. So say I cut out that bird, and I cut it out and I said, boy, I wish I had it facing the other way. I can. Wow. So the nice thing about boutiques, Joann's has its own little section of boutiques, and they sell these things called fat quarters, which if you're a quilter, that's just it's like a square of fabric. Usually they're fairly well priced, or you can go get a quarter of a yard. I have any numbers of quarter of a yards of things, or if I really love it, sometimes I'll have as much as a yard, because I know I'm going to use it in a lot of paintings. This particular fabric here has always been one of my favorites, and it's like gold to me. I mean, I've used every inch of it. And this was these were white birds. I took this photo when I visited my sister in Sarasota, and they were waiting, and I thought, white just didn't seem to give them enough emphasis. So I decided that I would make them with this fabric, and then I filled in this background full of fabrics, but I left the water, again, the acrylic watery part, because I think water is very hard to do with fabric. I've put in little pieces before, but sometimes the fabric it puts a layer on and you can see the edges. So when you do water, sometimes you just want it to look like it's flowing. So sometimes I put it in, but not often. And then your biggest problem once you glue these on is you have to look at the edges. Wherever you have edges of one fabric meeting, say, your rest of your painting, or meeting another fabric, you have to see what you're going to do where that changes. Like in this case, I had several kinds of foliage in here, and I had to paint a lot of foliage that bridged the gap between certain types. Like this was a fabric over here, and some of this was fabric, but I had to bridge. In each case, I had to bring pieces from the background in and pieces from this fabric out. So it became very time intensive to work over this, particularly at this size. But this is probably my favorite piece. Probably part of it is, I have no idea how much time it took, but I will never do it again. So it's like, I just keep that one, and some of the pieces I keep as lessons, like they were happy accidents. I can't figure out quite how I did it. I can't seem to do it again. Or maybe I just want to keep it around so that I can remember how to do it again. So there have been some like that. This was a photo of plain old brown ducks that were on the St. Charles River in Boston. I was visiting my son and his wife, and I took a picture of these guys. I shouldn't say picture, I took a photo of these guys, but I didn't want to make them brown because I don't use a lot of browns and grays and blacks. So instead I had the same fabric as that, and I put them in for the feathers. And then I had this piece in here, and there was 1, 2, 3 fabrics here. I think I only had, yeah, here's a 4th. I think usually I'll try to do 5, but I had all the water, and then I put the lily pads in, and this, I painted the ducks, but then I put this in as their feathers, and then I painted fish in to sort of, kind of just something interesting in the water. So this again was another one of my favorites. And then this was one where the entire background is fabric. There's 1, 2, 3 major fabrics here. And this was a photo from the zoo. And if you're walking up where the carousel is and you look at all the, I guess they're pelicans, they nest in this area by the water, and I could see them. I would hang over the rail, and I took a picture of them, and I wanted to show how they were nesting. So they're actually painted, but the background, I love that shade of blue. I happened to have cataract surgery that year. I hadn't seen that blue in a long time. You know how it turns yellow? And I was painting, trying to find that blue, could never find it, and then had surgery and found out that I had it all this time. It's my favorite color. So anyway, I did have a couple of photos. Like this was a llama that I took in Ireland. He was sleeping. There he was. In an impossible, I can't believe llamas can turn their legs like that. I mean, it didn't even look real. And there he was, and I thought, I would really like to do that. So that's always kind of a start for me, is to have a photo. And then from there, I thought about the colors that I wanted in it. So here was the picture of all the fabrics I pulled to try to get an idea. Now, I just went into my studio and pulled down my crates. So if you were going to do this and you didn't have a store to look through, you'd go to Joann's, or you'd go to the Quilted Fox, or Artistic Fabrics. I think they had Jackman's. It's off of Lindbergh. They have a nice selection. And you can just take your canvas in there with your idea or your photograph and just think about it. A lot of it is just using your imagination and trying to figure out, try to visualize it in there. Try to think about, how would that work? That's really, it's like, do I want it in the background? Do I like this fabric so well I just want to put it somewhere where it really stand out? Do I need soft colors, or do I need, what kind of colors do I need? And I think in most cases, I find that you need some really dark darks, and then you need some really bright ones. I always put a light source in all of my paintings. So if you have that in, you know where your shadows are. And sometimes you can get a fabric that comes in 2 or 3 colors. So you might have in one it came in a orangey color, and then it came in a green color. So I used the orangey color for the sunlit area and the same fabric in the different color for the shade. That worked. So, you can get away with so many ideas. It's like it's a total experiment. Here I laid some things on. Here I used the tracing paper. Just because, and I usually make 2 copies because I can't remember. Sometimes by the time I get the pieces down, I can't remember where they went. So I'll take a photo of it.
It's that numbering.
I know I need to use numbers. And so I've tried different ways. If I put just one and then I cut it all apart, then I can't remember where all the pieces went. So I usually make a second copy. I'm very low tech. And then here was, the process of starting to glue it down. And then that had, all of this was fabric. And then I painted into it. So that had a number of fabrics in it. And it was just a photo that intrigued me, that meant something to me. I think if you're going to put in all this time, you want it to mean something to you. So, I have collected, I have these luscious colors and color combinations, and it just gives me wonderful ideas on what you could put together. Like, and when you're talking greens, when you're talking leaves and different foliages, it's amazing. Even just to go over there and see what they have, you don't have to use fabric at all. It's just, they have great ideas. And quilters paint with their fabrics. It's a whole wonderful world on Pinterest if you look up, art quilts. And you can see how they get so intricate, and they use these most amazing colors. And I just really wanted you to see some of the possibilities. So, this one, this was several cases where I took the dark edges. Oh, thank you. Fabrics like, pretend I'm back here. We have an aerial. This is the fabric. And so the purpley parts became the shadowy parts. And then, you can really build on it. You can start layering it. And if nothing else, you can just use it as an idea,
Is it cotton?
It's all 100% cotton. Yeah. And pretty much if you get a good quilt fabric, you can count on it not falling apart on you or stretching out, or sometimes they fray. They still do fray, but you can cut them carefully and then be sure that you glue the edges really well.
Are you saying you always use 100% cotton?
Yes. I tried some other things one time, and when I applied gel to them, they went dead. I think I used, it was like a brocade. I thought, this will be great. I found this great oriental fabric that was sort of a brocade. It was a disaster. It just soaked up the medium, and it turned brown. So I experiment all the time, but I think 100% cotton is safe. So, and that's mostly what quilters use.
Where do you do all those shiny pictures where you're getting what you're doing to look at to make your big picture?
I go to Costco. I take them on my phone, go to Costco, and it's really
What you
inexpensive.
haven't just developed,
Yeah, I'll
like
just-
8.5 by 11 or something in bright colors?
It's only a few dollars to get a big picture from them, or a big photo. I mean, I was amazed, the photos that I could get for this demo. I mean, normally I don't do that. I just have them on my phone. But I wanted you to see.
Well, I don't have things on my phone, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I don't have a phone like that, so.
My
Now
phone.
you got a photograph.
And
I know.
I'm not gonna judge it, I'm not gonna read it.
So anyway,
Demands.
are there any questions?
I think in the curious to know that
Yeah, I'm not a fabric person.
cloth that
you used?
On this
Yeah, in the
one?
middle, yeah.
Yeah.
You like so much, and down below on that bird on the right-hand side, it turns into a very light and bright. Is that also cloth,
Well,
or
now,
is that painted?
that's painted, but what you do is, once you glue it down, then you can push it with oils. Say I really want to push it. I can then add, I can take that color, I can brighten it, I can just fill
So
it
you
in.
feather that so that it looks round like it looks now,
Right.
without having a piece of cloth.
Yeah, and I
Very nice.
very carefully kind of shaded it
Very
back,
nice,
and so you can really get a depth with it. So it becomes, you know, like it's almost like it's a pattern or something, and then you can give it, like this one was another case of that,
Choose room.
where, you know, where it met here, and I brightened that area and darkened in some of these others, so
Right.
that
Always
really, yeah. This was, it gave it kind of a drama. And this was a fabric, these were fabrics that were a big florals. I cut out these things and I thought, they'd make good rings, you know? I wasn't too concerned with something that was totally realistic. It's sort of spooky in a way. It's kind of got that mystique.
I love the shafts of light across the floor. Here, yeah.
When it's all done, I would put a good olive on it.
Very nice.
How long have you been doing this?
I started taking drawing in 1998.
Wow.
I went from drawing to watercolor, and then eventually to, I did all the drawing classes, all the watercolor classes. I tried pastels, and then I switched to oils. But I always liked watercolor, and finally, after a while, I decided I didn't really want to go back to watercolor because I was no longer that sort of detail painter, but I could use the watery effect in single pigment transparent acrylic. I had never had luck with acrylics before. They always went dead. Every time I tried to mix a few together, and I hated them. But if you got the single pigment, I usually went with Liquitex, and get transparent, because on the back of the tube it tells you if it's a transparent one or not. And you can mix some colors just like you would with oils. And that's been a way to do the underpainting and really get that watercolor feel, and then go back over the top of that with oils if I want to build something up. And I've got a really permanent surface. I don't have to frame it, don't have to mat it. I can just seal it and hang it.
Were you studying, you said you were working with watercolor. Is this what you were doing in the community colleges?
Yes,
You were working with the watercolor and then you finally got into the acrylics?
yes. I took all the classes. I just decided it was good therapy. I needed it.
Did someone teach you this particular technique, or is this all yours from the get-go? Is this original?
It's mine now. I know it. I think there are people that do it,
Really?
but I've not really looked into it then. I've just been experimenting with it myself.
Great jobs. And I've never seen anything like that. I would have thought that by putting the fabric on a surface like that, there'd be some, what's the word for it? Something that comes off the canvas because of this. But it doesn't appear to be at all. It appears to be flat surface,
Yeah.
whether it's cloth or paint, it all looks just fine.
Once it's on there, you can't really get it off very easily. If you glue that on there, you can tear the canvas trying to pull it off if it's totally dry. And it builds it up. So if you make a mistake, you kind of have to just keep going with it. I've done that too.
Now, you said that you covered the whole canvas with material. Did you, is that the, I don't know, those burrs?
No.
Is there material all over that canvas underneath there?
No.
Or just in the background?
Just all the background, let's see. All of this part in here was painted first with this watery stuff. And then I went back and I glued on sprigs. I cut out all of these sprigs of things, and I started gluing them all on and making it, kind of building up all this surface. And then I went back and I painted all this in and combined it. But down here, this is all just the acrylic. And this is really watery, because when you think about it, acrylic and water will give you the best water effect.
So you're saying you painted this first and then you layered it with the fabric?
Yes.
I thought you said at the beginning that you did the whole thing with the fabric and then you...
What you do is you have an underpainting of watercolor-like underpainting. That's your composition. Acrylic, but it's acrylic. You're using acrylics like a watercolor. You're mixing them with water, and you're brushing them on and pouring them.
So it's more or less like a collage. You are building up from the base of acrylic, and then you're building up your fabric to make your design.
And then once that's all dry, then you can paint with oil if you want. So you can just keep
Because the
layering.
acrylic is like plastic.
It
And
is.
the oil will adhere.
It will. You can't go back because it's oil. You can't go back to acrylic after you put oil on here.
No, I know that. You can paint oil over acrylic, but you can't put acrylic over oil.
And the other thing I don't do is I don't generally ever glue fabric to an oil painting because I don't know how that's going to adhere. I feel like that's not the same. I think that's safer to put it on acrylic.
Did you say that you were going to do some gluing on one of the pieces tonight?
I could just put a little bit, like start that.
Fantastic. You guys want to see her do that?
Sure.
I forgot my rubber gloves, so I'll just do it without you.
I've looked at fabrics before and thought, gee, I'd like to paint that stuff. That makes a pretty good design. I'm just going to copy that hair and that blouse I got there. I never thought of putting pretty good.
Have you ever experimented with velvet?
Yeah, I thought about it, it doesn't work. I can't make it work. I shouldn't say it doesn't work. It might be doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
No, that's why I use the 100% cotton, just quilt fabrics.
You want me to take this around and you can see
Kim, do you want to bring it farther out so that it's not so close to your other painting? There you go.
Okay, and then let me see which one's,
I thought, oh, she saw my tablecloth. She's standing on top of
at this point, I'm just gonna get messy.
Okay.
I could use a paper towel when I'm done.
Okay.
Maybe even get it a little wet at the water fountain here. So this is the gel. It looks like Elmer's glue. Pardon? Probably a lot like it, yeah. Doesn't have much of an odor, a little bit, you know. It's just like Elmer's glue, really. Mhm. So what I do is you have to put a good coating on first. You want to be sure you coat this top and bottom. So now after I get this bird on here, then I'll go back and I'll paint his feet on, you know. So what I'm just hoping to do at this point is just get an idea for the bird. So I cut out this bird shape. With my tracing paper. And you don't have to be all that accurate because you can come back and you can paint, you know, over it. But you're just kind of getting it set on there. And that doesn't really have enough on it yet. So all my edges, I just make sure that I get them all really well coated.
Have you ever quilted?
Once.
I noticed some of your patterns kind of lean towards a quilted pattern.
Yes, I think being around both of my sisters who quilt, it was bound to happen, but I didn't enjoy it.
I hold all of my background, all my aunts and they all quilted. My
Yes.
mother, I promised her I'd finish her quilt. It's still in the closet.
Thank you.
That's gonna be a really challenge for me.
Yeah, it's nice, you probably have those fabrics in your closet. So what I try to do is I try to make sure all the wrinkles are out. And I want to be sure I get a good coating on the top of this as well. Because any little place that you don't, that paint can seep in, oil especially, it'll get underneath here and it'll seep in and it'll turn it an ugly shade of oily, brown, you know. It'll take all that color and just kind of get rid of it. So I thought after that, this is where it starts to really get messy.
But interesting.
Yeah, like you just decide, okay, I think generally I want to probably turn that way. This is a batik. I love batiks. This one looks good, front or back. Get some more stuff. And I pull this up multiple times sometimes. Once I get some of these forms down, and then I start adding to them and layering them, because sometimes you find, oh, this needs to go over that, and it's not, you know, it's like it'll be under it, and you'll have to pull it up and put another one down or something. But anyway, let's say that the wing is more or less in that spot. Actually, I think probably would be more like that. And then you have to have the tail. I think I actually took a picture of this somewhere. This is the strangest thing that I always had this in mind to do this one. And never did. So this was another shape that I found in one of my.
I've got yarn.
So it's not necessary to let them dry in between?
No,
Good.
you can just keep going.
Talk about fabric.
So you can really start,
I'm a
now
fabric.
this is the body here, and I probably start this above it a little bit, and I probably have the body coming over this. And I probably have some of these darker.
See, you could do the same thing with this. And if you don't have material, you could do the same thing with paper.
You could paint all this. You don't have to use fabrics, but it does give you some good ideas.
Yeah.
So maybe this is maybe could fit under here. And then maybe that's probably more than, I could really go crazy with that tail. It's really good. She's so good color. I cut these little zigzag things out because I thought they were kind of interesting. I think. Get my photo.
It's beautiful.
It's sort of coming, you know, it's like you just sort of decide, okay, maybe that'll work. Sometimes I pull things off 2 or 3 times and just think, well, maybe that won't. I'm not crazy about that little part, so I'm going to pull that off and maybe I'd like that layer better.
Because you're going to paint over this, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Oh, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute, this could be, I remember now. It could be an eye. Like that shape in there. Could begin to, you know, to make it sort of, don't have an imagination to do this.
I think you have to have creativity.
Did you have more of these supply lists by chance?
Excuse me?
Of the supply
Oh,
list?
yeah, Mary's got a whole bunch over there.
Okay.
And then- I need a lot of copies.
Was it on the handout?
It's that, yes, that handout.
Oh,
There were a couple members that were, I
Do
think
you
didn't
live in
get, came in a little
Wildwood?
later.
I live in Chesterfield. I just drive to,
In Chesterfield?
uh-huh.
Because I was noticing where you won the People's Choice with your artwork in Wildwood. I didn't even know they had a community college in Wildwood.
Yeah, I really feel so lucky because I used to go to Forest Park. I lived closer into the city, and I used to drive to Forest Park, and my teacher that I loved moved out to Wildwood, and he started the art program out there. And then my husband and I downsized, and we moved out there, and I got to take his classes again. So anyway, this just starts a process, and then, you know, you can keep going with it. I cut out so many little pieces, you know, it's like, this could be even underneath here. So you can try different things and see if you like the effect.
how long of a time do you have before that gets too sticky to move the material? 20 minutes?
Huh? You know, I can pull it up within an hour, you know.
If it's like what you suggested, what's the white
This stuff is, you
glue
know,
that you said, yeah, that takes a little while to cure.
it's starting to adhere to my fingers
Ah.
and stick them together. Usually a scrub
We're
brush.
pulling up on about 8:30,
Oh, good,
so,
okay, so this is
um,
about the right time.
yeah.
Okay.
So some final, if you have some final thoughts, or if there's a last few questions?
Okay, well, I just want to thank you. This has really been fun for me, and I hope it's been helpful. I mean, even if it's just to give you a few ideas on something new you might want to try.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Isn't that awesome? Big round of applause.
The acrylic.
Build them. Some of it's
And if
very
you want to
tough.
come up and look at it closer, this is a pretty heavy, puffy piece. It takes a lot of paint. Once you glue that on, if you do have a quilter in your family, you're going to take these really sewn together stuff. You have to put a lot of, and acrylic would be the way to go because you can put lumps of that,
Right.
it'll dry. And then you have to compete with that big piece of shape by doing another couple of
Right.
pieces, like that's why the Oxford should be.
Just stunning, just absolutely stunning.
Well, it'll be done.
Some of it's sewn, some of it was sister sewn.
Jerry doesn't have that creativity.
See, looking at it from the side, you can barely see it off the
And
canvas.
that is material. The rest is all acrylic.
It's up.
Did you paint your fish or the fence?
The fish, they're. I think I
It's still a little bit better.
And that's material.
Made by some
surface of the product.
And this piece of material, she didn't paint it from dark to light.
With the land, it dries.
But when you put this in, it was already there covers on the front.
It's like getting Elmer's glue.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I wanted to buy.
Yeah, it was the cover material that she bought.
Or just vinyl, I use grow lights.
Yeah. The acrylics and Elmer's glue are almost the same chemical formula.
Are they?
Good to what?
Elmer's glue and acrylic are almost the same.
You want me to bring this back?
Oh, easy. Oh.
Excuse me, that's
Focused in North St. Louis County, Northside Art Association is a nonprofit 501c3 arts organization that serves local artists through community exposure, networking, education, and peer interaction. Learn more about Northside Art Association at www.northsideartassociation.org.